The days when I could just walk into Target and buy a planner off the shelf and be satisfied with it. Those were the days. Hi everybody. It is November, which means that it's planner launch season. We're getting ready to decide which planners we want for 2022, unless of course you're an academic year person, and if that's the case, then this is late, sorry. I thought I would give you some ideas on how to choose what planner you're going to use next year using a kind of methodical approach rather than an emotional approach. Because often, at least for me, my purchases are driven by how I'm feeling at any given moment rather than what I actually need. And I've discovered that the methodical approach tends to end up with more success than buying things based on feelings. So I'm just going to run you through some of that methodical methodology in this video. And if you want a bit of a deeper dive, I have a Skillshare course that I did a couple years ago, but it's still relevant. It's linked in the description below about finding planner peace. It's got all sorts of like handouts and shit like that if you really want to dig a little bit deeper, but you don't need to. You can just use some of what's on this video to help you get there. So the first thing that I consider when I am thinking about getting a planner is what I'm going to use it for. And there's all sorts of things that you can utilize in your planner, but they tend to go under two different categories. One of those categories is scheduling your life, and one of those categories is project planning. Now, scheduling your life is fairly obvious, right? You're keeping track of your schedule, whether it is appointments that you have or meetings that you have, whether you are scheduling in a morning routine or your kids' school drop-off schedule or activities, whether you have like Zoom calls or whether you have TV shows that come out on a schedule, things that you need, like appointments in time, whether they are actual appointments or appointments you're making for yourselves. That schedule of your life is something a lot of us use a planner for. And as a matter of fact, I would suggest almost that is the traditional usage of like a weekly calendar, a diary, whatever you would want to call it, where you go and you just put in the things that are coming up so you don't forget them, like your schedule. The other thing is project planning, and this can take many forms. This could be in its purest sense, like project planning for, say, work or for around the house, like home project, like doing your landscaping, or a small home project, like reorganizing your kitchen drawer. But those are projects to plan out. But then there's other projects as well. Meal planning could be considered a form of project planning. You're planning your meals out for the week. A lot of the tasks that we have to do each week could fall under some sort of project planning, even if that project is like your day-to-day life. And then you can take some of those tasks and turn them into your schedule if you create appointments for them. Most of us need a planner to use for both of these things in different forms or another. For me, I tend to use my planner more in the sense of project planning, like figuring out when and how and what tasks I need to do and when they're going to happen. Most of my scheduling I do in Google Calendar. So while my schedule does make its way into my planner, it's almost secondary compared to like all of the appointments and things like that. I put them in my planner to be aware of them, but what I really need my planner for is to help me take the other things that are not appointments and figure out when and how they're going to get done and keep track of them. So for me, that's the main aspect of it. I used to love having an hourly planner with a monthly calendar when I did all of my scheduling in my planner, but ever since moving over to Google Calendar for that because of having my family be able to access it, having lines, a vertical style planner, whatever is fine for me, but an hourly type planner is pretty wasted on me because I don't need it anymore. That's not what I use a planner for. So understanding kind of what you need in a planner for the parts of your life that need planning. How many times am I going to say that? But whatever. That's a very important key. Everybody's needs are different. We all use different things. For some people, they may actually want to have a schedule and project planning in the same place. They might use something like a Google Calendar, but they also really lean on their planner for scheduling their family stuff. Or maybe you have a calendar you put on your refrigerator to keep your family schedule on. Like, there's all sorts of ways to do it, but the key here is to really understand the planner you're going to use for next year. Is it important that it really carry your schedule in it, or is it more important as a project and task planner or is it a mixture of both? That's just something to keep in mind because those things very much could define what will work or what won't work for you. The next important thing to think about is your budget. It runs the gamut. There are planners you can purchase that are like 10 or 15 bucks or less if you get printables versus spending hundreds of dollars on a custom like Giglio planner cover and everything in between. There are so many different options with so many different price points. The reason I suggest setting your budget ahead of time is so that A, it helps you narrow it down a little bit. Like if your budget is 40 bucks, then that knocks things like an Erin Condren planner or a Moxie Life. There's a lot of planners in the $50, $60 price point. If your price point is lower than that, then that knocks them out of competition in the first place. So you don't even have to worry about them. The second thing is that if you have a very specific budget, that will cause you to be more thoughtful about what you spend your money on. Because if you only are allowing yourself, say 50 bucks, or 20 bucks or whatever bucks for a planner, you're not going to go and buy every new shiny thing that flies across because if you're sticking to your budget, every time you potentially buy something, that means you won't be able to buy something else. It might help you maintain some breathing room to consider your options. The key is though, is to set your budget and stick to it. And I know that can be hard for some people. I'm not great at offering advice for that. Once you have decided what you want it for and how much you're willing to spend, the next thing you really want to think about is size. And the reason I'm suggesting size is because much like the budget idea, this will narrow down your options. When it comes to size, there's a few things you want to think about. How much space do you need to write? Do you have large handwriting? Do you have small handwriting? Do you have large handwriting and like lots of white space, or small handwriting and like to have a really filled up page? Does it need to be portable? If some people are heading back to work and they're going to bring it in their bag. When I was working at Trader Joe's, I didn't need portability because even though I used a planner every day, I didn't bring it with me to work. There was no use for it for me at work. I planned my life outside of work, but I did need to bring it with me to meetings when I had like PTA meetings and things like that. So how portable is it? My biggest factor here is I love lots of white space in my planner. I like the look of it. I have a lot of shit to put in my planner, but I do like lots of white space. And while I can write small, my regular handwriting is not small. So for me, bigger is generally a little bit better. That's why I moved from an A5 bullet journal to a B5 bullet journal, and I have not looked back because having that extra bit of breathing room just makes me feel better. My work planner is a letter size planner, and so I tend to go for big girthy planners, but I also don't take them anywhere. For one, I don't really go anywhere, but even if I did, I do all my scheduling, like I said, in Google Calendar, and if I need to take notes, I can bring my bullet journal or I can just throw them into like the Notes app or Notion and transfer them in later. So for me, the joy of having room to write and lots of white space outweighs any need for portability. So larger for me is better. And I actually really hate smaller planners because I feel cramped in them. That knocks out a whole range of planners that are smaller for my general purposes. For you, it might be different. So now that we've talked about like the size of the planner, the cost of the planner, and what you need it for, let's talk about some of the more like nitpicky aspects of any given planner. One of the things I want to emphasize here is when you're thinking about stuff you want or don't want in a planner, I like to kind of think about it in the sense of stuff that's absolutely important to me, stuff that would be nice to have, and stuff I really don't want. And also things I'm ambivalent about. There's all those things, right? And so for you, it's really important to like kind of hammer out what is like absolutely critical for you in a planner, what is absolutely critical that is not in your planner, and then the things that are like, well, yeah, that would be nice, but I don't have to have it, or I really don't care if that's there or not. Because that, again, will help you narrow some of the choices down. First of all, the binding of your planner. And we've got all sorts of different ones, right? You got coils, and within coils, there's different kinds of coils like wire O binding or standard spiral coils or plastic coils, whatever the case may be. The disc system, you've got the ring system, you've got the book-bound system. Of all of those things, what do you hate? What do you like? What would you prefer? So for me, for my personal planner, I know a few things. I really dislike book-bound systems for anything except for my bullet journal. I like it to be able to really lay flat. I like it to be able to go around on itself. And I find most book-bound planners, for me, there's a level of annoyance when it comes to writing in the crevasse of where the binding is. So most book-bound things are just not up my alley unless it's a notebook for a bullet journal. I do use a disc system currently for my work planner. I don't like it, but it's working for me based on what I want. And what I need there is I'm using printables for one. For two, I'm using letter size printables. So having something that can fit those is important. And for three, I'm changing things in and out. So that is what is important for me with discs. If you really want to change things in and out, you'll probably be looking at either discs or at ring planner systems like a Filofax. If you want a coil, which is my preferred kind of coil for my home planner, there's all sorts of different coils there. I have made no secret, I really hate wire O binding, but I'm using a planner with wire O binding right now because as much as I dislike it, for me, it is not on the must never have list. It is much more on the I really don't care for it. But if the rest of the planner is awesome, I can live with it because it doesn't go anywhere. That's my feeling on wire O binding. I would prefer a spiral coil, but it does not have to be a spiral coil. Think through those things. Think about how you want your planner bound. What is it that you really like? Do you want it to lie flat? Do you want it to be able to turn around on itself? Do you want to be able to change things in and out? Do you want it to look professional? Any of those things, those are all important things to come with the style of planner, how it's bound. And that can, again, help you eliminate a whole bunch of different things. Then we have other things like paper quality. For me, paper quality is very high up there. The planner I'm using right now does not have the greatest paper quality in the world, but I think the layout is super cool, so I'm willing to live with it. But for my 2022 planner, I'm pretty sure that paper quality is going to be very close to my top things, like more so than the coil, more so than anything else. I really miss having really nice paper, so that's something that's going to be high for me. It might not be so high for you, and what you want in paper may be different than what I want. I like paper that is thick but not too thick. I like paper that is white. I like paper that has a little bit of a tooth to it and is not too ultra smooth, and I like paper that works with all the pens I like. What I don't like is crispy Hobonichi used toilet paper Tomo River paper. Now some people love it, but for me that stuff just makes my skin, my hackles raise. Like it's like touching newsprint. I also really dislike super thick paper when it comes to bullet journals. Some people love that because they love to paint and do other things. For me, I don't like feeling like my journal is cardstock. So those things can matter, but how much it matters to you is your preference. For me, obviously, I have very strong feelings about paper, more so than coils. And so paper is high on my list. It might not be for you. That's just something to figure out because again, all of these questions, while it seems silly, they can help you narrow things down. You might have a planner that fits all of your things, but if the paper is garbo and paper is top priority for you, that might not be your planner. Or you might decide, well, you know what? Everything else is perfect. I can live with the paper. Another functional item of your planner that goes back to thinking about your schedule versus your tasks and your projects and what you actually need to use it for is the layout of your planner. There's all sorts of layouts. You've got monthly layouts, you've got weekly layouts, you've got daily layouts. And within those, there's all sorts of other layouts. For weekly layouts, you might have horizontal or vertical. You may have hourly. Again, my Skillshare class goes into all of this. And one other resource you can use is if you start to narrow down some of your planners, a lot of websites for these planners offer downloads of their layouts so you can try them out ahead of time. So that's one thing to figure out. So for me, what is most important is a weekly layout. I don't use a daily layout in my planner because generally speaking, any daily stuff just goes into my bullet journal. And most daily layouts give you room to schedule and put your tasks. And as I've said, the schedule part is really not necessary for me. I have used both vertical and horizontal weekly layouts and have enjoyed them both. Really, for me, it just comes down to what I am aesthetically enjoying at any given moment, and currently my aesthetic enjoyment is in the vertical, and so that's likely what I will be looking at for next year is a vertical weekly planner. I really enjoy having a monthly planner. It's not necessary for me, but since most planners come with them, really not a big deal. But for me, I will say one of those weird little nitpicks that I have is that some planners have all of their monthlies in the front and then all of their weeklies. I prefer the style where it's the monthly with the weeks for that month and then the monthly with the weeks for that month. Seems small, but I don't think I could live with a planner that had all the months together. That's just not something I enjoy. When it comes to layout, what kind of start do you want? Do you want a Monday start? Do you want a Sunday start? There are some planners like there are some planners that allow you to customize this. Others you have to go with what they have. Some planners are really annoying because they have Sunday start for their monthly calendar and Monday start for their weeks. It just depends on what's important to you, but again, those are things to think about. Editing Cindy here. I totally also forgot to mention that one big thing that may or may not break your want of a planner is whether you want it to be dated or undated. The key with dated is that you don't have to take the time to actually put the dates in, which is my preference. Undated, though, if you buy it and you're not sure if you like it or it's not working for you right now, you can either hang on to it and use it again later because it's not going to quote unquote expire, or you can sell it and you have pretty much an unlimited amount of time to sell it because it's undated. So that is something to keep in mind when you are deciding on your planner for the next year. Like I said, personally, I'm going for a dated planner because even though I put date covers in, undated planners are like too much work for my lazy ass. We've talked about layout, we've talked about binding, we've talked about paper. Like those are the base bones of a planner. But then it gets into the nitpicky details. And this is where having an idea of what you want could be helpful, but you probably won't find something that actually fits all of your needs exactly. So it's just important to kind of understand the things you do or don't want in a planner. Decorative versus neutral. How much bullshit do you want in your planner? You probably can tell what my thoughts are based on how I phrase that, right? Flowers or fancy fonts, motivational quotes, how much color, all of those things. It can go from one hard direction. I looked at the Harriet Wright planners. Those are the most neutral sons of bitches I have ever seen, all the way up to like some of the Happy Planner puking leopard print and orchids all over their planner kind of explosion, right? It can go either way. And so if you have an idea of how much you want or don't want, that could be helpful. I prefer a neutral planner, but I can work with a planner with some color and so on and so forth. So I'm willing to work with that, but I tend to lean towards the neutral spectrum. A planner completely full of random bullshit will not be the planner for me. Another thing to think about is what extras do you want in your planner? Do you just want a basic planner with like your weeks and your months and that's it? Do you want a planner that has goal setting stuff, or would you prefer to have your goal setting stuff somewhere else, or do you not give a fuck in the first place? What about other things like checklists or prompts? I have a planner review coming up in a couple of days where there are so many checklists, and I actually, some of them I'm like, but some of them I'm like, maybe, but I don't actually want them in my planner. I might want them somewhere else. But some people might actually love that. I looked at a different planner earlier this year where she has out like an hella amounts of meal planning stuff in the planner, and that might appeal to some people. Basically, if you want a bare bones planner, you can probably knock some of these planners right off your list because they'll have way too much shit for you. But if you want a planner with some extras, think about what extras you might want. Some planners have a water tracker already built into it. Some planners have habit trackers already built into them. If you can figure out your stance on extras like this and which ones would be nice to have and which ones you really don't want in your planner, that might help you. It also can help in terms of price. Some of these planners with more shit are more pricey. If your budget is lower, then you might not, those might just be like out of the question to begin with. Or you might decide you have all of these must-haves and there's no planner that fits that, so you might be living the bullet journal lifestyle. So now that you've kind of gone through and thought about all of these things and hopefully come up with some ideas of what you really want and what you really don't want so you can play process of elimination, once you start looking at those planners, this is where, for me at least, I make the gut decision. If I'm looking at a handful of planners that seem to fit my needs, and I'm already kind of in that spot right now, like I'm already fairly certain, I've like narrowed it down to just a few choices. And so now the real question is, which one do I think I'm going to use? What's my gut? And I'm going to have to go with my gut. And I'll talk about what planners I'm using next month because I haven't made that decision yet. So I'm not going to tell you right now, but I will say I have narrowed it down. The key is to just remind yourself that the reason you're spending the time to make this decision is because you want to spend your money wisely and to know that the thing that you're getting, you've put thought into as to whether or not it's actually going to help you with the things you needed to help you with. And that's different for everybody. And if you buy something and it doesn't work for you and you need to kind of go through again, that's okay. You didn't like violate any sort of top consumerist rule. But if you want to get rid of it, go onto a BST group and sell it. Get your money back. This isn't rocket science and this isn't saving the world. But these decisions can really make an impact on us, both in our day-to-day, in our enjoyment of planning as a hobby, in the necessity of planning as a way for us to make sure that our lives don't completely fall apart at the seams. What I wanted to do with this video is just give you some ideas on how to make the decision-making both easier for you and take away some of the pressures of marketing, because companies are really good at marketing to us. They put a lot of money into it. There's a lot of technology that goes into it. If you feel like you're being pulled along by the marketing like current, don't feel bad about it, because that's what, like, fucking, you could say something and suddenly you'll get shown Facebook ads on it. Like, that's what technology and companies are paying for, is to get our attention, to hold our attention, and to tell us that we need something. And what I'm hoping that this video did for you in a very rambly way is to give you some ideas on how to push through that and discern what it is you need, what it is you want, what it is you really don't want, and what is best for you in both a planning sense, in a budgeting sense, and in a mental health sense. So that next year, as we're still trying to work our way through coming out of a global pandemic that we're still in, by the way, that you can do it in a way that puts less stress on you and gives you a little bit more space to think about the things that actually matter to you. Does any of that make sense? I hope so. Give me your best tips for deciding a planner that you're interested in, and if you have any epiphanies from this video, I'd like to hear them as well in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, friends, peace.